Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art. I'm Derek Mazzoni, and I am hosting. Um, we are now doing multiple live streams, which is awesome. We, of course, are going through a whole bunch of interesting stuff on the planet, dealing with, of course, a pandemic. We're dealing with a social transformation, which hopefully will truly create amazing opportunities for our fellow travelers on this planet that have not had these opportunities before. But one of the most important parts for us here at Sama is to make sure that through this process, the power of music, the power of art to transcend, to create a space for people's hearts to be raised and for connections to be made is present and is shared and is amplified. Now, there are many parts to create a beautiful musical experience. You, of course, have the artist, the instruments, and the engineering tied to that. But one of the most important parts is the producer, somebody with a vision and with the skill set to put all these parts together. And tonight, on a new look for Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art, we're going to go a little deeper into that process where it's more of an educational perspective. There will be performances, of course, but this one is a conversation with a producer who I consider a good friend and somebody whose work I deeply appreciate. His name is Brennan, and he's been involved and championing voices of artists and people that have don't have an opportunity to be heard as much as they should, and also doing the diligent hard work into uh, making sure that parts of the world that are easily brushed aside either by their difficulty, such as the Zomba prison project in Malawi, or populations that are truly on the fringes and at risk, such as albino populations in Tanzania. He has gone into these places and he's brought his microphone and his skill set, and therefore the work and the artistry of those populations is seen and heard. Brennan here on Sama. Hello,
Hey,
Ian.
hey,
Thank you for being here.
thank you. It's good to
And
see you.
now, you've been producing for a long time, and your the stories must cover the gamut of the experiences that you've had and championing these artists. Now, your background, started like most people in rock and putting that out, but it pivoted
Most
into
most white people.
most white people. I'll let you say that. Um, but it pivoted and it went into some really interesting directions. So I would love to know a little bit like what got you into music and music production, and then secondly, when did you decide that you didn't want to focus on white Western artists and go deeper and actually go really deep, into the mountains, into the villages where you could have just stayed in the big cities where it was easier. Please tell us that story.
Well, like a lot of people, I caught the music bug early, which is basically one of my earliest memories is music and dancing, and I started playing music when I was a child, the drums and then the guitar when I was 5 and 6, and um, and I was obsessed because I unfortunately heard the jazz quote that is attributed to a lot of different people, which is if you don't make it by the time you're 18, you'll never make it. So I became probably OCD about mastering the guitar, meaning the lead guitar, and I would do nothing but, I would skip school to do it. I would, not sleep to do it. We're talking about 8, 12 hours a day for my teen years, and um, and then I started making records when I was 20, and was my own worst enemy, like most artists, because of lack of objectivity and ego in whatever form. And along the way, I just, you know, I never cared about authorship, and I never cared about fame particularly. I just wanted to be part of a creative process and to contribute. And I became more and more interested in other people's voices and the repetition that is found in the copy cutter industry of recording, especially corporate recording, but really all recording by nature, is a big copying machine.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it caused me to want to see things that were more unusual, and you know, we have over 100,000 releases, full length releases, just in America alone every year now, and it's ever increasing with digital because it's so much more easy to release than it used to be.
Yeah.
And I felt like, you know, there has to be more than this repetition of straight white males playing standardly tuned guitars, bass, and drums, often the same three or four chords, often the same diatonic melodies, um, and there is, and so I mean that process began in the late '80s, almost at the outset of making records, and just my interest in that deepened, but I you know, and I started recording and producing for friends in San Francisco, and then eventually worked with Ramblin' Jack Elliott and other folk artists like Peter Case, and then you know, started working with Tinariwen. We recorded the record in Algeria, but the reality is I probably never would have stepped foot in. I mean, I'm a California suburban working class person, and I probably never would have stepped foot much overseas, let alone you know, in Africa and in Asia, if it weren't for my wife Marlena Umahozadeli, who does all the photos and video for everything we do, and she's Italian Rwandan, and so our first trip was to go with her mother for her mother's first visit to Rwanda since the early '80s, so since long before the biggest genocide in '94, and she was reuniting with a friend who she'd been told had perished in '94, but then found out in 2008 had not.
Wow.
And so we went back to reunite with her friend in 2009, and we went in search of music. Marlena was making a documentary about her mother's return, and we sought out music, and you know, after 2 weeks of searching, we hadn't found anything really that we felt particularly compelling. There was a lot of good stuff, there always is, um, but you know, again, was it enough? Was it unique enough to justify being released? I mean, that's
Mm-hmm.
always my concern. And we were lucky enough to meet the good ones, and then we just have kind of kept going from there. And we've produced 28 albums and counting by international artists from non-English language countries, usually underrepresented populations globally in terms of media, and and sometimes, as you mentioned, persecuted populations like
Yeah.
the Tanzania Albinism Collective.
Yeah, and it's and the thing that really struck me in looking at your work is that it moves. It really moves. It moves a part of your soul and your heart that to your point, the cookie cutter stuff, the things that it's just like, okay, you know, I'm a fan of pop music. I'm not, it's not, this isn't
So am
like, you
I.
know, but it just feels that there's so much expression, so many languages, so many ways to really live like a human being on this sphere, that these artists need a place to be heard. So let's actually share that, because we have footage that your wife shot of the good ones in Rwanda. So let's look at this and let's speak about them a little bit because it's so compelling to me.
Very good. Yes,
Let's see it.
beautiful.
n'abana baraburara baburara ukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize koko yankuyemo ukorera umushahara umushyira n'abana baraburara baburara ukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize nagusabye urukundo urarunyima we uti narwutezwe rukurwo mu bugeni muvandimwe wanjye tega amatwi nkubwire kaziza urubyaro nzize n'urushako naho abana baraburara baburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Uwisize muri meridiye utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Uwisize muri rasiyera utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Uwisize no muri bawuba utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Seje mu yose nzi amaboko mbabajwe no guca inshuro mfite uwandengeye. N'agakekere yose nzi amaboko mbabajwe no guca inshuro mfite uwandengeye. Na nyenyeri yose nzi amaboko mbabajwe no guca inshuro mfite uwandengeye. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Uwisize muri meridiye utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Uwisize muri rasiyera utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Wisize no muri bawuba utifata icyo ushaka mugore wanjye. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize. Naho abana baraburara babura rukorera ifaranga rikaribwa n'uwisize.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you.
They're amazing.
They're stirring. They're I don't even know. There's just their ability to share. We don't speak the language, but we get. I personally understand it a little bit. I love to see the lushness of Rwanda in that too. And you guys been working together for 11 years, so there's like a connection on many levels.
There is. I mean, there's almost a familial connection, meaning to the country because of Marlena's heritage. But beyond that, as you can see, these are like many, I think, of the finest artists. There's something extra with these individuals, and I don't mean better. Every life has great value, but there's an extra sensitivity, and so the ease with which they communicate, the lack of affectation is inspiring. And we were there in December with them, and we went to Adrian's house that was filmed there in the hills, which are very remote. Cars don't usually go there. It's quite hard to get there by car. And we recorded with them some more. We were there really just to say hi to them, because we were there with Marlena's mother again, and we'd done a recording trip nearby in a fairly close by country, and we recorded just to do it while we were there, and they sat down together, Janvier and Adrian, and recorded 6 songs that Janvier had never heard before, and they would talk about it for about a minute. Adrian would play him a little bit, and then they'd play the song, and it was
Wow.
perfect every time. They never stopped. They never said, "Oh, now I got to do that again. I could have done that line better." Just,
That's
just
beautiful.
just incredible. Like
Beautiful.
really, they've been singing together since they were little kids. So they're really one voice, and they really, I think, singing together is such a powerful thing because it's corrective. So you don't need auto tune. You need to sing together, and when you get 30 people singing together, they can have seemingly the worst voices in the world, and they won't be out of tune collectively.
Hmm.
And these two guys, when they sing together, they correct each other in that they almost have learned to sing like as one voice only. So sometimes when they sing alone, they're a little bit flat or a little bit sharp, but then together they're just
You're
one
just making it work,
and
and it
sound on,
works.
and it works. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
because you really they dovetail so much and it's such close harmony, which is you know a rural thing, I guess, because in America there's a lot of close harmonies in the Appalachian, and coming from various sources, and so when they're singing, they're trading off lead and harmony vocal, so that it's very hard to tell really who's singing what.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like there's really no lead sometimes.
It's beautiful, and we'll of course post the link to their Bandcamp and make sure that in this time that bands can't tour, that as many of our viewers get to learn more about them, because the complexity of their work and in its simplicity is just stirring. So the good ones are from Rwanda, but you also just recently worked with a band out of northern Ghana, Fra Fra. Tell us about that a little bit.
Well, Fra Fra are in northern Ghana, which is, like most countries, the rural areas, the more remote areas, are a world away from the capital, where which a lot of people may see. So, um, more than other places, understandably so. I mean, capital's got a big airport and is more developed. And they're up there in the north, the mostly Muslim north, and funerals are a big deal there, like a lot of places, but meaning that they can go on for days and reportedly sometimes up to a week. The celebration is quite an important aspect of the process, and so Small, who's the leader of Fra Fra, has been performing funeral songs in the north for decades, and he looks to me and certainly acts like somebody who's a generation or two younger than he is. I was quite shocked to learn that he was 72 years old. I mean, I never would have
Wow.
guessed it in a second.
I'll have what
Because
he's having.
yeah, exactly. He dances. He's limber but also just vocally, he's a true virtuoso and a true paradox in the sense that he's got a very, very big voice. You know, I'm powerhouse, and so they do funeral songs, but I think the beautiful thing is that they're bringing a lot of joy to the process. They're bringing a lot of complexity, but primarily a lot of joy, which is in pretty sharp contrast, I think, to what often happens in the West, so to speak. I lost my own father last month, and to have
Sorry.
done this record and had this record released just a few weeks prior to my father's death was helpful to me, because I'd experienced it with them when we recorded it at the very, very end of 2018, and in the ongoing relationship with them. But to have the record kind of enter the world during this period where there's so much suffering and death,
Hmm.
and then my own father, and to see an approach to it that I think was more nuanced and probably more realistic ultimately, and more balanced, has been of great benefit to me personally.
The sacred experience, birth, families coming together, marriages or gatherings, however you choose to do that, and then passing, um, is a place where I've discovered a lot of really powerful music and artists created. And so when I saw this initially from Glitterbeat, the label, and then you told me about it, I was really intrigued. But let's take a look at some footage of Fra Fra from Northern Ghana.
Great.
Beautiful. Thank you. Fra Fra from
Thank you.
Northern Ghana. How did you find them? How did you guys find each other?
Well, I mean, every project has been different. It's just a leap of faith. We do these as labors of love. We lose money on them, and we never know if we'll find anything. In most cases, and then when we record, we're interested in the process, not the product. So we have not released probably not as many, but almost as many records as we've released, because if to do otherwise would be hypocritical if we just had made a decision that, oh, since we went to region X and we wanted to find music, then therefore we're going to release it no matter what. No, we make sure that a release is justified, and usually in the process, you know it. There's a moment. Sometimes it's right away when it's somebody who very virtuosic, like Small. In other cases, particularly with amateur musicians, meaning people that have not done music before, when they're composing for the first time or singing solo publicly for the first time, there's a moment where just a song comes from somewhere that no one expected, including the person, usually themselves, and it's just so beautiful that it's like, okay, well, this is what we're here for. This is the dream, really, is to participate in that process. And so we were actually in Northern Ghana for another release, which we didn't have any guarantee, but and it is going to come out early next year. And while we were there, we trying to keep our ears and eyes open, and we saw and heard a lot of music, and a lot of it's good. A lot of it, some people would like more. Maybe most people would like more, meaning it might be slicker or this or that. But eventually, we caught wind of Small and what he was doing with Fra Fra music and Fra Fra culture in the Fra Fra language, and we met with him, and his was a case where it was like, okay, this is going to be something beautiful and something of great value and something that deserves as big a platform as can be found. I mean,
Sure.
My mind is probably a little twisted or my ears are a little bent, but if anybody deserves a big platform of millions of people or hundreds of thousands or billions, which I don't know that anybody does, but if anybody does, I think what he does deserve that so much more than what's shoved into our ears and down our throats and gouged into our eyes daily by the corporate machinery.
No, it's true. It's true. But to me, it also speaks to a visual element, because you're hearing it, but when you see it, when you see where they are, who they are, you see their spirit, and I would love to see more of that, because often, I've been lucky enough to be in various places and see these artists in their homes, and it's a different kind of musical experience. They're not like dragged through customs and cavity searches, eating food that they never had before, and it's just like exhausted time zone. When you're there and they're giving you their best at that moment, it really is a transcendental experience, especially when it's this kind of music, the music with with the raw intention of transcendence. I find is stunning, and that also leads me to Ustad Sami and the record that you produced, "God Is Not a Terrorist." This amazing singer of devotional music of Pakistan. Often when you think of Sufi music of Pakistan, you think of Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan or the Sabri brothers, or if you go deeper, Abida Parveen and others. But this was one of the times that you and I met because I went to Sama with my dear friend John, and we went to WOMAD there, and we got a chance to see him. No, based on the fact that I got the record, I've been playing it, loving it, and then got a chance to see him, and the complexity of what he's able to do, the range of his vocal style, and it gave me a different perspective on Pakistan. It gave me a different perspective on the complexity of these people, especially where in the West, Pakistan is tied to terrorism, Osama bin Laden, all of this stuff. Here's this one artist with just the utterance of his voice, brush that aside, and you got a chance to actually experience him, his spiritual belief, but also a window into this beautiful country that it doesn't you don't get a chance to see it, you don't get a chance to hear it. It's just one voice. Going to your point, we get this one message, one music being crammed onto us. Propaganda is even more pervasive and harder, where you try to take, Pakistan is gigantic,
It's
and it is
huge.
like it's so complex, and you just get this one message of that. And so having Ustad Sami there was really compelling. I want to play this video first, and then I want to talk about Ustad Sami because I got a chance to meet him with you, so it was
Yeah,
beautiful. Let's see it.
great.
أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله
Ustad Sami. The record is out on Glitterbeat Records, which we love quite a bit, and it's called "God Is Not a Terrorist." I got a chance to see him at his last performance, not last as in like he's passed, but last time he got a chance to be on
No,
stage. He said,
could be. You never know.
Woman held. Thank you for being honest, but let's see what can happen. I'm crossing my fingers, glass half
Yeah.
full. He's amazing, and tell me a little bit about how he sings, why it is so unique, and also, if you can, a little bit more about Pakistan, because one of the things that in working with Sama and creating this is that music and art is a window to another culture, to another people, and it's a powerful one because it's hard to put it into a box, and especially with Ustad Sami. And before that, like we had this conversation. Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan, amazing, became so huge, it became like the one artist. It's like the Elvis, John Lennon of Pakistan. It was just everywhere, pervasive. But there's complexity. Like this isn't Qawwali; it's another type of singing. Surt, I
Certain.
mispronounce it. Surti, and he sings in like he was able to go through like so many notes. It was like just it was this transcendent. Speak to this. You could do it better than I can.
No, you're doing great. His system is a system of recovery, and it's embracing complexity and ambiguity and nuance, which I think is what we're talking about here. Really, is that how can a country of 213 million people be represented by one individual? And Pakistan is a example, and Nigeria historically has been another one of kind of the double-edged sword that they've had an artist that has made impact, at least with music lovers throughout the world. So Fela in Nigeria and Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan from Pakistan. But there's a downside to that, which is, again, how can one voice represent so many people? How is that possible? And so really all of this is about diversity, diversity, diversity. I think the answer anywhere you go is that, number one, there's no small countries. I mean, we have 2 records coming out next year from 2 of the smallest countries in the world, but they're not small. They're 1 million people. And I think the best example of diversity is within families. I think most of us, if we have siblings, we oftentimes look at our siblings and we wonder if we're related to them. We love them and we see certain similarities, but then in other ways, we might be night and day in our views politically or artistically. And I think artists, yeah, they do offer a view, but they offer a pretty, strange view into what's going on too. And I think essentialization is always the dangerous thing, and diversity is the antidote to that. So the essentialization, and this is how culture gets transmitted and contaminated largely in terms of the truth of it, is that, if someone comes from Romania and they meet Tom Waits and they think that represents your average American, they would be wrong.
Yeah.
And some would argue that he represents a better America, and that may very well be true, and that's the beauty of art. But there's a greater complexity there. And so what Ustad is doing vocally is a 49-note microtonal system. As a lot of people might know, in our system we have officially 12 notes. We usually use 7 of those 12 notes, often with blues and folk in our culture, and most other cultures historically start with 5, and then it usually grows and expands from there. And he's doing 49 notes. So that means for every one of our notes in our custom scale, I mean our normal major minor scale, he's doing an entire scale. And he spent his lifetime mastering this, and he's been really unyielding and committed to his vision. He can do the styles that other people know, like Qawwali, which is a celebration music, and his sons are masters of it. He can do this music, but he's chosen instead to do this ancient form that he has to re-envision, because nobody knows for sure what it was, and try to recover what he sees as the lost tones, the ones that have been considered wrong. And he's trying to take those negatives literally and turn them into positives, and show that they have value by exploring the subtlety of human emotion through the nuance of the notes themselves. And I think one of the most beautiful things, I'm sure you saw it when he performed, is that he will sometimes do this sweep from near the bottom of his register all the way up, and he conducts a lot with his hands and arms, and he'll do these sweeps upwards, and then he'll go back and he'll do it again, and then he'll go back and he'll do it sometimes a third or fourth time. and every time he does it, he's going through and he's hitting different microtones every time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very, very subtle. Maybe even something that would elude the average listener, including me, maybe elude anybody but him. But his hearing is so profound and his concentration is so great. And he was the chosen one in his family, which meant that, a musical family, a lineage that had been passed down for almost 1,000 years. And what that meant was that his teacher, what his teacher did not allow him to speak for years. He could only express himself vocally for years, and he didn't perform, meaning being on a stage and perform, until he was in his late 30s. That's how long
Wow,
his,
that's some serious,
Yep.
it's gonna sound sad, but like, Shaolin temple stuff. Like you are just going to like pick up this pebble with with your fingers and drop it. That's amazing. That kind of dedication and um, uh, that kind of dedication to mastering something
Yep.
and then be able to share it. Now we had this conversation also that some of the work that he is dealing with is pre-Islamic, which is difficult in Pakistan right now. That he's actually championing this, which causes rifts within certain populations, and to be able to stand firm, like the music speaks for itself. It will not be just because it doesn't fit a particular current narrative doesn't mean that it will be cut, that it will be the honesty of that. I found really, really stirring. And one of the intentions, Sama, of course, before we started live streaming, was to bring artists such as Stami to Seattle and from there to the United States, because they need to be seen, they need to be heard, in order to start creating this relationship with artists, individuals, and therefore countries and groups that the propaganda machine um, tells you to be wary of. It's bullshit. No. So on that note, I wanted to ask you I wanted to get a quick question. You have a background, you're an author, and you have a background in mental health. So you've also told me that sometimes you're asked to help produce artists who would be difficult at times. They're amazing, but they can be difficult to work with because of their art. So what's your secret there? How do you approach an artist with that kind of reputation? Often artists do. It takes a particular kind of mindset to go, here I am. What's your approach with that?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I have an approach. It's just, out of necessity. I mean, my sister has Down syndrome, and so I grew up, you know, always valuing nonverbal communication and ways of connecting with people. And there was mental health issues in my family, and so when I turned 18 and I had to support myself somehow, and I'd failed to do that by obsessively playing guitar, the only thing that interested me was to work in social service and mental health of some sort. And it was very hard to get hired as a long-haired, unqualified kid, but eventually a hospital hired me to work night shifts, cleaning up people's diapers for minimum wage. And I just had to and continued to work in hospitals for 15 years. And most of that time I worked in the psychiatric emergency room for Oakland, California, where I did the triage interviews when people would come in that the police had felt were a danger to themselves and or to others. And somehow, the worlds intersected, and it's certainly not a planned thing. And along the way, sometimes people would ask me to work with people that were knowingly difficult, people with addiction problems or people with mental health issues, and knock on wood. I mean, uh, I don't know. I mean, it's every situation's different, but in general, I found that most people, it's you just have to listen to them. I mean, it's really just about listening and trying to connect. And Zomba Prison was an interesting example because I didn't think a lot about it. Maximum security prison, overcrowded, in Malawi, which at the time was the world's #1 poorest nation, and has been firmly lodged, sadly, in the top 10 for a long time, as long as I think I've known. And but we went to the prison there and we recorded, and it was after, we recorded the record. We didn't know if there would be a record. We didn't know if the record would come out. It took a long time to find somebody to put it out. Then it finally came out, and it, got some attention, and that was that. And then a year later, it got a Grammy nomination, and then suddenly it became
Everybody.
a big story, and kind of a story of these individuals and what they achieved.
Hmm.
But at that point, a lot of people began to ask me, like, about the experience, and I hadn't thought too much about the experience of going into the prison in that way, because for me, in many ways, it was familiar. I mean, okay, I was in a country far away, and they were speaking a different language. But I've worked in prisons, I've worked in jails, I've taught a lot in these environments, and so I guess by no design of my own that those experiences have been beneficial, just in terms of being able to meet people and record music that might otherwise be more difficult to record or to facilitate, I guess.
Got it. Yeah. And they now their voices are heard, their stories are being shared, and you
Yeah.
are a pivotal role in that. So thank you.
Oh,
And
thank you.
please continue. We're going to be putting links to all sorts of information about you, but you've got a couple of things coming up. So just like share with everybody. Um, what are the two things that you have coming?
Well, we have in the immediate future. There's a record that we did with my sister and her community, her sheltered workshop community, that's going to come out in the fall, and shortly thereafter will be a record, uh, second record from Ustad Sami, which the first record featured some of the longer pieces, but this features even more, meaning only three songs. Two of them are 20 minutes, almost 20 minutes long each, um, and so it's more immersive. The concert you saw of Ustad in Australia, one of the two was a single song for 75 minutes. They gave them an extra
I love it.
15 minutes because they'd seen them do a similar thing in England where they played for an hour and did one song. So they said, we're going to give them 15 minutes more. And 75 minutes, a 76-year-old man played for 75 minutes without
It
taking a
was
break.
amazing, amazing. I have some footage of that, so we will edit that in. So we're describing this. We're gonna hopefully be able to share that with people. But it's a crazy time. We're not going backwards. We're gonna go forwards, and we will find a way to bring Ustad Sami and these other artists to the stages or to the screens of the world, because this music is vital and it needs to be seen and heard. Ian, Brennan, thank you for being on Sama, Seattle Circuit Music and Art, and we're going to do this again. Really
Well,
appreciate it.
thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Okay.
Be well.
Bye bye.
Bye bye. Seattle Circuit Music and Art. I'm Derek Mazzoni. We do this every single week, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And of course, these are available on Facebook and YouTube, and we'll be streaming to other platforms as this new technology and new system of expression is we're trying to get a handle on it, and it's been pretty great. It's been great to be able to share this. I want to thank everybody out there. Huge shout out to STG, our co-sponsor and promoter, and the production crew and everybody helping put this together. Be well, take care of yourselves, wear a mask when you're outdoors and indoors with people that you don't know, and see us next week. Bye.